Hi, everybody. This is Kevin Sabrin with Rethinking Everything and the Rethinking Dads blog. Good afternoon. I'm here on Friday afternoon visiting with Cathy Lemmon. How are you doing today, Cathy?
I'm just fine. How are you?
Very well, thank you. We wanted to take this opportunity to let the Rethinking Everything audience get to know you and introduce them to a topic that you're passionate about, which is homeoprophylaxis.
hmm
I've recently learned how to say that. Tell us a little bit about it. What is homeoprophylaxis?
Sure. I am a homeopath, and what homeoprophylaxis is, it's a homeopathic approach for disease prevention. It's a vaccine alternative. It's a holistic homeopathic-based one. It's non-toxic. There's more than 200 years behind it of a good, solid track record. Nothing is ever going to be 100% as far as disease prevention. We need to always understand that. But homeoprophylaxis has a very solid track record of being very successful over the last 200 years.
So in terms of treating disease or in terms of vaccination or both? Because you and I first met over the topic of vaccination.
Sure. Homeopathy does marvelously as far as treating diseases. Prophylaxis, when we talk about the homeopathic approach for prophylaxis, that's where the homeoprophylaxis comes from, disease prevention. For that word, it works as a disease preventative. It works very well as a disease preventative. So when you're trying to avoid getting pertussis, whooping cough, or polio, or any of those diseases that we commonly hear about. Thankfully, polio is not as common, but in any case, homeopathy through biohomeoprophylaxis works very, very well as a preventative.
So of the disease prevention goals, I think we've talked about kind of the big six or the big eight diseases. At least maybe we haven't talked about it, but I've read that recently. So how effective is the prophylaxis towards those, the biggies?
Towards, I guess, the big eight, there's eight particular that we can talk about. Record is showing that HP, we'll just call it that for abbreviation's sake, HP has been proven to be about 90% effective. Introducing no toxins into the body, again, it's a non-toxic approach, working as a holistic way, helping the body itself on an energetic level as a preventative.
Let's talk about that for a minute, the energetic level. My family subscribes to things like the NATE treatment and acupressure, acupuncture. You know, we're totally tuned into energy healing and things of that nature. How does Homeo HP, talk to me about how energy plays a role in this?
You've had how homeopathy works to begin with is it takes, you're probably familiar with how it takes a very minute portion of a plant, animal, mineral substance, and that's combined with liquid, and then it's pounded or succussed again and again and again, getting it down to the point that after doing that X number of times, you're down to the point that there's not a molecule of the original substance left. You're down to what I like to call the pure energies of that substance, the healing energies, the preventative energies as far as prophylaxis. And so when you're using homeopathic remedies as a prophylactic, you are using the energies to expose the body in a natural way to an energetic form of the disease. So there's absolutely no chance of contracting the disease or anything like unto it via the prophylaxis. Rather, your body is exposed to it in an energetic way. It responds in a whole and energetic way. And again, it's showing to be about 90% of the time the body won't contract the disease.
So in conventional medicine, chemical medicine, isn't there a similar effectiveness rate of 90 and 10?
Well, that's one of the things that we're not told a lot about. We're told, we're not given all the statistics as far as the tests that the allopathic, the common medical world knows, or what they technically don't know. They want us to believe in the efficacy of the vaccines that they use. And it's interesting to note things like the flu vaccine that was pushed so hard last year, and they continue pushing it hard. And every flu season, the flu vaccine last year was no more than about 25% effective.
Wow.
And when you look at a comparative rate between case after case after case with homeoprophylaxis being used, about 90%, with no toxins being introduced to the body, compared to what we have as far as vaccines, the choice becomes pretty clear in my opinion what the better choice would be.
Sure, sure. Well, it's always curious to me when given two different paths or two different choices, if there isn't an eminent critical time concern, why anybody would ever start down a chemical path before trying something homeopathic. It just never ceases to amaze me why you'd, choose door number 2 or plan B. That's what it looks like to me, rather than the, non-invasive or relatively non-invasive homeopathic approach.
Right. Well, and this is the thing. This is why I've become as passionate as I am about homeoprophylaxis. Is people don't know about it. I can tell you, I guess, maybe a little bit of my own history with it. It was about not quite 20 years ago. My second son was diagnosed with autism. This was just prior to his 3rd birthday. And I've always had an interest in natural approaches to healing, and it was also at this time that I was beginning my homeopathic studies. And so this diagnosis came from my son Joshua, and I thought, okay, well, let's figure out what we can do. And it was also at that time, though, that I started hearing of a possible connection between vaccines and autism. And my first thought as a mom is, no way. I'm doing everything right for my kids. I'm following the doctor's advice, getting my kids, to get their vaccinations right on time and everything. But I kept hearing this, and I started thinking, you know what? I've got to look into this. I've got to prove that I'm right. So I started doing my own research just to assure myself that I'm not harming my children. Right. Well, I didn't want to go to any anti-sites. I wanted to go right to the source so that I can find and know exactly what the real information truly is. And the more I started looking at places like Merck, places like the CDC, the more I started going, wait, this doesn't sound, I don't like what I'm finding, basically. And, where are the statistics that show one of the things that I really wanted to find was assurances that, one of the basics, how the infant mortality rate is here in the United States, how low it is, because it's just got to be low because we're such a healthy society. But I wasn't finding that anywhere. And so, and I was realizing that the information that I had been given at the pediatrician's office was very minimal at best. It didn't address the questions that I wanted to know. So as I was studying this, the notion popped into my mind, wait, okay, disease prevention, that's something that everybody seems to want. There's got to be a choice. Where is there a choice? What choice do we have? A choice. And I wasn't finding anything until finally at one point I stumbled across a doctor by the name of Isaac Golden. He's in Australia, and he happened to be studying this thing called homeoprophylaxis since about the 1980s. So, well, the mid-1980s. And I started looking into what he had been doing and what he had been finding. And the more I looked at that, the more I was thinking, holy smokes, why doesn't everybody know about this? I wanted to just get up on the rooftop and say, hey, look, here's a choice. This is a non-toxic choice. This is something that you can be doing. And I was just going, everyone needs to know about this. Well, my children, again, were young at that time, and I had a lot to do, as mothers of young children will attest to. And so, unfortunately, I couldn't afford to get his book because it was all the way down in Australia. Yeah. And I had to put that kind of on the back burner. But I continued on, of course, with my homeopathic studies. I continued studying vaccines as well. And, of course, continued being a mother to my children. And it was just a few years ago, I think, that I was visiting online. He was addressing vaccine injury at that time. And so one thing led to another. I actually connected with him. He has helped me work with my son, who's now 19, and doing remarkably well, doing wonderfully well. He's working as a cashier at a local Walmart. And I just thought, you know what, I'm with Isaac Golden right now. I'm getting my homeopathic program going. Isaac, what can I do to get homeoprophylaxis as part of my program? And so he helped me. And now it's a very, very big part of my program. I was in Europe last summer teaching about it. I just recently got back from teaching it again at a convention in Salt Lake City. And a colleague of mine we've been able to put together a worldwide conference even for the promotion of homeoprophylaxis that's going to take place here in Dallas, Texas in October.
Fantastic. What are the dates for that?
I'm sorry?
What are the dates?
Sure, it's the first weekend of October, October 2nd through 4th. The website, you can check it out, is hbworldwidechoice.com. It's going to be a fantastic event.
Well, I think that's terrific. I applaud you for doing the research back in the early days and kind of sticking with it and going through and getting the credentials and hanging in there and now promoting it to a national, if not global audience. I think it definitely deserves that. One of the things that has troubled me throughout the years in terms of vaccinations and their desire to immunize through these vaccinations is, obviously it's a very, personal choice, and it's something that every family has to cope with and grapple with. But one of the very fundamental components of that is the pace at which they administer. Knowing that these things, unlike homeoprophylaxis, where it isn't going to cause any kind of, there isn't an after effect or a side effect, or it isn't likely to make you ill. The pace at which they administer is like quadruple.
I'm afraid you've frozen.
Can you hear me okay? Sorry, folks, we're having a little computer glitch, a little connection glitch.
Yeah.
But we'll be right back. So anyway,
we're back. I think
the pace to me is very troubling. The pace at which they administer these drugs is and these viruses is something like quadrupled from what it was a decade or two ago. And when you dig into that and do the research, the CDC themselves say that basically that's because they just want to make sure everybody's immunized. There's really not much more to it than that, other than managing the opportunities. They're only going to get so many opportunities to prick you with the needle, so let's get as many in while we can to make sure everybody is immunized. And that fear, if you will, of controlling the herd is really that. It's the herd effect. They're afraid somebody's going to get sick and infect everybody else. And without regard for other options like what you're bringing to the table here. It's really troubling to me. It always has been.
Right. And unfortunately, I missed part of what you said because the computer froze on my end too. So I've been talking about frenzied pace.
Yeah, no, I was just simply talking about the pace at which they administer chemical vaccinations and virus-laden vaccinations. So it really wasn't a question as much as a soapbox rant, so we don't have to spend any more time on it. It's something that's always troubled me. And one of the reasons I was glad to meet you and learn of these options, that, that truly is not just a curative element, but there's an immunization component to what you do, the prophylaxis.
Protected, right,
yeah.
Protected.
Well, I feel like our audience has had a taste for what this is all about, and they've certainly gotten to know you. We hope that you'll be joining us again soon, if not at Rethinking Everything 2015, then sometime in the near future. Maybe we'll even be able to stream some of your content or share some of your content from your upcoming conference.
Okay.
Rethinking Everything, folks, if you're inclined, is September 4th through 7th in Little Rock, Arkansas, at the CA Vines 4-H Center, where we hope Cathy and a number of other folks will come out and join us with other wonderful topics like homeoprophylaxis. And Cathy, again, your event is called what?
The conference will be called Homeoprophylaxis, a Worldwide Choice. The website is hbworldwidechoice.com.
And again, your October
2nd through 4th.
And where is that in Dallas?
It's going to be technically it's going to be in Louisville, so just north of Dallas.
Excellent. Well, I wish you the best with that conference, and I appreciate you spending some time with us today to talk about this this great new initiative. Not new.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.